What is your favorite thing about the John Wick films? Is it the fashion of the assassins and interior design sense of the Continental hotels? Is it the combat wizardry and weaponry of the hired guns of the hired table? Is it the fictional universe it portrays of living outside the regular world with its own code and rules adhered to with strict authority? Whatever your favorite parts of the John Wick films are, I'd like to offer another point of admiration from the films that can be seen through two old sayings in Japanese that I believe the films are somewhat expressing. First, here's what it looked like in one of the best theaters in all of Tokyo, Toho Cinema's Hibiya. This area in Tokyo is next to the center of luxury in this mega city, Ginza, which by all means is a must visit while in Tokyo, whether it be for sightseeing during your travels in Japan, for the pleasure of experiencing a different culture, for expanding your education, or for conducting business. The experience of watching movies in Japan often includes merchandising for sale. Not every film does so, but the amount of merchandise available for John Wick Chapter 4 Consequences was more than any other of the films in the John Wick series. How cool would it have been, though, if they had made available the bulletproof suits that were used in the film? Even cooler still, however, is living a life not ever needing a bulletproof suit. In any case, I settled on a ballpoint pen modeled after the legendary pencil that transformed our main hider assassin into the boogeyman manifested into physical form, the Baba Yaga. Before or after whatever film you see at Toho Cinema's Hibiya, you might want to pencil in some time to do some writing. For writers, Tokyo Midtown Hibiya has a Starbucks to take your notebook or computer to do some writing. If it's a computer or digital device that you work with, there are some power outlets along the counter seats and at the group table at the back of the Starbucks to keep your devices powered. There's also a food court on the first basement floor with plenty of tables to eat, drink, and write on. This is one of my favorite places to write and watch films in Tokyo, and I believe you'll find it great for your writing, social, and cinema outing needs. Before we get into the two Japanese sayings that I think best reflect John Wick Chapter 4 Consequences, allow me a minute or two to review the IMAX and Dolby Cinema versions of the film. Ticket prices in Japan are exorbitant, so choosing the best theater for films like John Wick is a requirement in order to get the best experience out of the film. IMAX is like the muscle car of movie theaters, while Dolby Cinema is the Italian luxury sports car of movie theaters. Both offer its own unparalleled quality to the cinema experience, but sometimes one is better at putting the viewer into the world portrayed in films than the other. With that said, how did these two theaters stack up to the onslaught of John Wick Chapter 4 Consequences? At Toho Cinemas Hibiya, you'll find an IMAX theater, a premium theater, and a Dolby Atmos theater. For watching films in an actual Dolby cinema, there are two that I know of in Tokyo: Walled 9 Cinemas in Shinjuku and the Dolby Cinema Theater in Yurakucho, which is just a few minutes walk from the Toho Cinemas Hibiya. IMAX theaters in Japan often give posters or postcards of films while supplies last, whereas Dolby cinemas in Japan don't. However, for John Wick Chapter 4 Consequences, a special sticker was given upon entry into the theater. In a nutshell, watching John Wick Chapter 4 Consequences in an IMAX theater was like being hit by a sledgehammer, and watching the film in a Dolby cinema was like being sliced and diced by a samurai's sword. The IMAX version of the film was a tad excruciating because the volume was so loud that the row I was a part of kept covering their ears during fight scenes because the impact sounds were like listening to explosions going off right next to your ears. After watching the film in a Dolby cinema, however, I started to feel that the IMAX level sound for the film was better at implying the pain that John Wick was going through on his path of destruction to gain his freedom. On the other hand, the sound system in the Dolby Cinema version was better at reproducing the 360-degree dimensions of the car chases cutting through the streets of Paris, and the incoming forces surrounding John Wick in the fight to escape the Osaka Continental. So, if you wanted more of a physical implication of the feelings of trying to survive the arduous ordeal that John Wick was going through, I'd say that could be best felt in the IMAX theater. I think going into the film as a cinema experience, John Wick Chapter 4 Consequences is a visual and audio treat that more than satisfies the martial arts action fan in all of us, while at the same time keeping us hungering for more films like this, the fourth installment in the John Wick franchise. That being said, I do think that the film can highlight an important aspect of writing, especially for action films that other films from other franchises have done a better job at implementing than John Wick Chapter 4 Consequences. If you're interested in hearing more about this, please be a master assassin and hit that subscribe and notification buttons for additional thoughts on John Wick Chapter 4 Consequences in Tokyo, Japan, as well as words on other films performing from this side of our planet. So, what are the two Japanese sayings I think are great ways to see the films of the John Wick franchise, especially John Wick Chapter 4 Consequences? I believe that what the film and the franchise express that might be resonating with audiences on a deeper level that goes beyond all the gloss of the style and swag that many fans find so appealing about the John Wick series of films can be found in these two older sayings in Japanese. Furuki wo tazunete atarashiki wo shiru. There is nothing new under the sun, which literally means we learn of new things by inquiring into old things. This is a Confucian maxim which emphasizes the importance of mastering old knowledge as a means to uncovering new knowledge. And the other old Japanese saying, Hito wa furuki ni shikazu, koromo wa atarashiki ni shikazu, which can be translated into English as, old friends are better than new ones, but new clothes are better than old ones. As well as being a take on the film and the John Wick franchise, these two sayings also offer important aspects of not only Japanese culture but many Asian cultures. Reflecting on the relationship between young and old, these two sayings are at the heart of many films in the martial arts genre, to which John Wick films draw heavily from. Beyond all of the visual aesthetics that the John Wick films dazzle audiences with, it's from these two Japanese sayings that I believe elevate the film from being just hard-hitting action entertainment and into a type of modern mythology that could help illustrate timeless truths about the human experience. Throughout the history of Japan, we can see how despite the devastation it endured from civil and world wars, the country and its people have continuously shown the remarkable ability to recover and be better than it was before. I think a lot of this is due to its respect to the older members of its society. If so, then an expression such as Hito wa furuki ni shikazu, koromo wa atarashiki ni shikazu can provide a glimpse of the inner workings of the Japanese mind and its cultural values that played a big part throughout the history of recovering after devastation. Also, such an expression is a common theme in martial arts films that has made the genre an all-time favorite among fans of movies, as we witness the martial arts hero develop into a more capable individual through their relationship with the older members of society. And this narrative is as much a part of the John Wick series of films then culminates in Chapter 4 Consequences. In terms of Hito wa furuki ni shikazu, koromo wa atarashiki ni shikazu, we see throughout the John Wick films that the individuals out to make a name for themselves by trying to be the architect of his end are young in comparison to John Wick, whereas the people to whom John Wick seeks counsel and who help him are older in comparison. John Wick stands in the middle of these two opposite ends of the age spectrum, and a saying such as Hito wa furuki ni shikazu, koromo wa atarashiki ni shikazu suggests how this recurring situation throughout the journey to freedom that John Wick faces is too an expression of thematic truths that any of us will have to face on many an occasion. What can be revealed through the contrasts of John Wick's interactions with the younger and older members of his world is a mirror about our own world and the lives we live. That old friends in the literal sense is a necessity if one hopes to succeed or come out of alive in whatever endeavor one pursues. Whether it be in the fictional parallel reality of the John Wick universe or the corporate capitalist culture we live in today, the young compete while the old counsel. When that is reversed, it tends to be destruction rather than creation. There is a delicate balance of both that is needed to forge into the future, but in a society like Japan's, where hierarchy is often outlined by age, and its long history of destruction and rebirth having survived and thrived beyond the impacts of civil and world wars, I would offer this opinion, which is also based on personal experiences, that respecting and learning from the old can determine the longevity of groups and individuals alike. With that being said then, Hito wa furuki ni shikazu, koromo wa atarashiki ni shikazu brings us to Furuki wo tazunete atarashiki wo shiru. A similar saying to this in English would be, there's nothing new under the sun. John Wick Chapter 4 Consequences has an amazing visual sense aesthetically, and the same could be said about parts of its narrative. At the beginning of the film, we see the setting sun from New York and from parts unknown in the Middle East, and finally the rising sun in Paris, which is to say that the sun is setting on John Wick and a new day is upon the John Wick universe. Beyond the visual element, such a saying as Furuki wo tazunete tarashiki wo shiru evokes the connection of the Confucian maxim to its core meaning is what John Wick is actually armed with that helps him to not just fight along a chosen path, but choose the correct path on his way towards his freedom. And it is a path to freedom, not just applicable in the fictional world order of the John Wick universe, but one that also rings true in our own reality. Furuki wo tazunete tarashiki wo shiru. We learn of new things by inquiring into old things. This is a Confucian maxim which emphasizes the importance of mastering old knowledge as a means to uncovering new knowledge. John Wick's original plan was to simply kill everyone as a means of acquiring his freedom. Finally, however, in Chapter 4, he learns from Winston an alternative way to do so, and instead of killing everyone, John Wick employs the old ways of the table by challenging his adversary to a one-on-one face-to-face duel. In doing so, John Wick then needed to re-establish ties with his former family members to sponsor his campaign as requirement for his challenge to be accepted by the table. That came as a consequence or benefit depending on how you see things. Without his knowledge from Winston, an elder member in the universe of John Wick, the destructive path that John Wick was committed to follow through on would have perhaps destroyed more than just the underworld that they inhabited. Furthermore, in aiding John Wick's campaign for absolute freedom from the world order of the table, John Wick also helps reestablish the lives of the older members who help guide him along the way, like rebuilding the New York Continental, which was destroyed earlier in the film. This sharing of benefits coming out of the relationship between young and old is not exclusively a factor of what makes Japanese and other Asian cultures. But having worked with many people from different countries, I would have to conclude that it is more so a part of Asian cultures like Japan than elsewhere. This relationship between young and old is often a reoccurring theme in many martial arts films like John Wick. From the Jackie Chan classic Drunken Master to the recent Cobra Kai Netflix series, the importance of the young learning from the old will always be of utmost importance, no matter the generation in question, either it be from the past, the present, or future day. In our world of declining mental health, perhaps this Confucian maxim needs to see more implementation in our modern culture to help people along their path towards their own personal freedoms. The success of the John Wick franchise could be a result of these types of common themes about the relationship between the young and the old. That is at the heart of many films in the martial arts genre. I think, however, that this quieter aspect of John Wick films can be lost amidst the fast-paced action sequences and enthralling fight scenes. But I do hope that the messages of Furiki wo tazunete tarushiki wo shiru, there is nothing new under the sun, which literally means we learn from new things by inquiring into old things. This is a Confucian maxim which emphasizes the importance of mastering old knowledge as a means to uncovering new knowledge. And hito wa furuki ni shikazu koromo wa atarashiki ni shikazu, which can be translated into English as old friends are better than new ones, but new clothes are better than old ones, won't be lost to audiences of the John Wick franchise and many other martial arts films cut from the same fabric. To have freedom is one thing, and to grow old is another. To grow old is not a given in life. To grow old is not an entitlement nor a right. If you do grow old, consider yourself one of the lucky ones. There is a grace, as well as a power, that is required as one grows old. That power from growing old, however, arises from peace, and not the other way around. For John Wick, perhaps that will not be part of his story, but consider it a blessing if you are able to grow old. And the best way to do so is to learn from the old. There's no other way to make you bulletproof and as strong as steel.